niche down, pick a platform, listen to this guru, track these analytics. You're told to do all of these things. But what if they don't feel right to you? What if they're not in alignment? What if they make you want to stop altogether? Well, that's obviously not good for yourself or your business. So let's talk to someone who knows a little bit about alignment and authenticity. We've got Ashlee here today, and she's going to tell us a little bit about herself, why this topic matters to her, and why it should matter to you. Ashlee, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Shauna. Thank you for having me. I guess part of my message is that, we put so much emotional and spiritual investment into what we're creating, and marketing is very creative by nature. And so to focus on alignment and follow what intuitively feels right is such a big thing for me. It's how I've been able to even continually move forward sustainably by really honoring this creative evolution and expression and what feels right, as opposed to what follows a formula.
That's it, right? That's kind of the point. And just so that everyone knows, Ashlee doesn't come from a background of simply existing, which is valid in and of itself. However, Ashlee, can we dive into just for a moment? Let's call it an overview of your journey that allows you to speak so firmly on these beliefs and with so much of an intellectual and experiential background that I think the people need to hear to really understand where you're coming from. Because for me, just to let everyone know, because you know me now, you guys have joined me for long enough. For me, the conversations that I have with Ashlee are very powerful, and understanding where she comes from lends to that sense. So go ahead, Ashlee. Just a brief overview would be amazing.
Okay. Well, I guess I have two sort of weaving storylines. One would be like career and personal, which we all, I think, do. But in terms of career, I grew up with an entrepreneurial mother who started an HR company that morphed from HR and placement into training, consulting, and executive coaching and executive consulting. And that was really incredible to be a part of. And I learned so much. And I worked in not-for-profit industry. I worked for the government. I worked in private industry. I worked with corporate training. And then I ended up really wanting to teach at an academic level. So I went back and got my master's and decided to teach at Conestoga, where I taught business, and I got to move into the community and social work school. And then I also got to move into liberal arts. So I started in business. And so at one time I was teaching in these three departments, and three is a very interesting thing for me. Three seems to come up a lot in my life as a theme. And so I was teaching in these three departments, and that's where I got a chance to weave in all of the multiplicity of who I feel like I am, or at least to give me an expansive feeling, a place to roam in a multidimensional way. And then in my personal life, I'd come through getting married fairly young. I mean, to me, at least at the time, it didn't feel young. And now in retrospect, it was 25, and having two children, and then experiencing sort of the pulling apart of my relationship with my now ex-husband, but my partner at the time, and co-parenting our children. And of course, in my personal life, deciding, well, as soon as I get this divorce, it's probably time to go back to school and get my master's, and trying to manage raising children while going to school, and doing a huge pivot in my career, and leaving what was supposed to be like a family business that was fairly set up to like, well, no, I really want to pursue this, and it feels so right. And in that space of teaching, I really understood I love teaching. I also love coaching. So I love the one-to-many. I love the one-to-one. I love talking to people and connecting with whether they're understanding and how to best have them join me in the teaching learning process, where I'm learning as well, teaching as well as they're learning, and they're teaching me in the same moment. And it's sort of this intuitive handoff of understanding what we both bring to the table, and how we're creating a third. We're creating a third from the two parties mixing together. And so at a certain point, I left the structure of the academic institution and decided to go out on my own and really fulfill that entrepreneurial part. And then in doing that, got to bring in the artist part of me again. And that artist part of me was really, really the final sort of time where I intuition and really be very unstructured and very intuitive about the way I go about things. And
so your art, I just want to rewind a little bit because we had a bit of a noise blackout there for a moment. So your art, you said, was very intuitive. It really brought out that intuitive nature within you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. And just to realize, like, in the world of business and even teaching, like, we've got balanced scorecards, we've got, personality profiles and assessments. We've got so many wonderful tools to help us. But at the end of the day, they're really just a gateway into diving into what you actually are, which is like limitless and very ethereal and very open and very multidimensional and really not pinned down to any one thing. So using those as gateways to really dive in and honoring the fact that it's not going to look the same for everybody. And if I'm going to be honest with myself and I'm going to be authentic and I'm going to be aligned, it's really going to have to give me a lot of room and space to continually evolve. Like, I feel like my refresh rate is pretty fast. So the structure feels, it has to be more plastic, more plasticity to the structure that I, abide by. So marketing rebels, this is a very keen kindred sort of thing, because I feel like it should be rebellious to a sense because it's their life.
and that's it. So now that everyone has heard this, I think we can all agree this is why I needed you to share the story. Because I know how. One thing I wrote down here was the multiplicity of who I am. Mm-hmm. Like, everyone can relate to that.
Yeah.
And oftentimes in the world of marketing, and I want to say big M, outdated marketing, the big M outdated marketing approach typically gives you a box and says, this is how you market. Please put yourself in there.
Yeah.
And that doesn't feel right for most people, especially women in business who are so, and I mean, and this is men and women in business, but in our culture, a lot of women feel this more intensely, is that whole multiplicity of self, that idea that you are all of these things at the same time, and to be forced to cut off certain parts of yourself in order to show up in a certain way doesn't feel right. And so we start to experience that resistance when we know we need to take action in order to better ourselves towards our goals.
Yeah. Yeah, we can't force ourselves to walk the plank in that way, right?
Yeah, it's not going to work. And I'm going to go out there and say it's not going to work. And the reason it's not going to work is because you won't be behind it. You won't. You don't want to do it. Why would you do? Like, if you don't want to do it and you're doing it, it's not going to work. It doesn't matter if it is the best Seth Godin approved like marketing prowess. It doesn't matter. If you're not behind it, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
And so that's why you and I talk about this idea of, do you need to niche down? Do you need to pick one platform? Do you need to pick one style? Do you need to pick one approach? And the answer to that for you and I is no, you don't. But let's explore niching down, because that's typically where we get a lot of hangups. For a lot of my clients, I'm sure that the people who you're speaking to, they will have heard this. You've got a niche down approach. What's your view on that?
I think it depends on where you're coming from, and it depends on your business goals, and it depends on your aim. Like, creativity and artistry are just something I'm not willing to sacrifice. My evolution is like not something, my business is me, and it's evolving, and it's intuitive, and I'm living it first, and I'm aware first, and I'm creative second, and I'm relating third. So like, it feels to me that this process needs to be honored. And I understand that for everybody, that might not be the thing. They have a product and they have a way to get it out, and they want to get it out, and perhaps expediency is their first necessity. Perhaps like, they know zeroed in, this is good for this person. But like, even in my own podcast and recording, like, I resisted niching down so much so that the podcast name is For the Love of Humanity. Who is it for? Humanity. Like, I just can't imagine, right? I can't imagine, like, my focus is such, like, you're here to create, you're here as a creative entity, you're here as something that's evolving, changing, growing all the time. You can create a life that you want. You can be designer, creator, architect, enjoyer. you have to be all these roles. And maybe that's because I'm a mom. Maybe that's because I've had to rebirth myself, however many times. Maybe it's
Mm-hmm.
because, I'm in an era where I was raised by a mom who had to be a mom and an entrepreneur and a lady in the community, like sitting on boards. And so it really, being singular focused really wasn't, I don't know it. I don't know what that is. I don't understand it. So niching down just feels like, as you said, it's like almost lobotomizing part, or like amputating part. I
Yeah.
can't come if I can't come as a whole person.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really powerful approach that people often dismiss. And like you say, it isn't for everyone. And that's okay too. That's kind of the point, right? For some people, niching down can help them with direction.
Yeah.
While and that direction can help them to be creative in their own sense of creativity, because everyone experiences that in a different way. But then for other people, they need to bring all of those different elements into what they do. I experienced something very similar. And this is why whenever I'm approaching the concept of branding and marketing, we're always talking about values first, because it sounds to me like you've listed out a few values that are very important to you. And you may have even hierarchized them for us to show why your approach is so broad. And it makes sense because it's grounded in what you believe in and who you are.
Yeah.
So we've got this idea of we want to show up wholly, whatever that may look like, but we also want to achieve success. Our goals are diverse and specific at the same time. So we want to learn from our mentors, our role models, your mother being one of them. She's a wonderful role model for many people in business, especially locally. For those who don't know, Ashlee and I are local peers, and I've been able to see firsthand some of the amazing accomplishments that she and her mother have achieved within our area. But how do you stay authentic to yourself while simultaneously learning from and adapting some of the teachings of your role models? Because that sounds like a journey and a half.
Yeah. Do you know, because I will say I have taken on aspects. I mean, I think being intuitive, you naturally might also lean into empathetic areas. And I think also you might blur the lines a little bit of, I'm having a shared experience here, and where do I end and where do you begin? But also being so reverent to the experience of other people, and thinking like, but how I get around that is, anytime I've ever tried to copy paste, it just doesn't feel right. And I understand that copy paste, like we have, like people can resell things on Amazon, like resell journals or things that are pre-created that people will allow. What is under licensing? I'm trying to, I've lost the terminology for it now.
They're copywritten or trademarked.
Right. And you can just sort of put your own brand on it and use this. And I understand that. And I think there's a great niche for it. White labeling. Is that what it's called?
Well, I see. I hear you. Yes, white labeling. So, and you do that a lot in business. For even myself, I've got a business that I would love to white label at some point in time, and they just have this amazing platform that systematizes some form of outreach within your marketing, which is amazing.
Yeah.
And I would love to adopt it into my program, and it would be white labeled under a title that I give. Now, I would always give credit to where credit is due personally, but there are many people who do that and make money doing that. And the whole point is to have done that. People make it to be white labeled.
Yes.
But
Yeah,
it feels weird, right?
for me, at least, the repetition of, I don't know if it's that I'm terrible at repetition. Like the moment I've done something once or twice, it's like I can't get myself to do it again. And again, this is why I don't necessarily prescribe this for people, but what I do hope that people do is find so intuitively what is theirs and really just go after it with all their might. And whether what's theirs is, I want to do this formula because then it frees me up to then go do this over here, or whether it's, I love this formula and that feels so good to me. Whatever it is that feels good to you is like, I believe what you should be following. And if it leaves you to have some creative license and creative exploration in some area, because we're creative, it's an impulse. We need to honor it, then I think that's fantastic. And like in this niching down, I'm not necessarily attempting to be counterculturalist. I think it's just marketing rebel, right? I think it's just part of, some of us have a little bit of that. I can't just conform. I can't just conform to something. It just doesn't go in that way. It doesn't filter in that way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And it to me, it makes more sense than I can even express. I think just this idea that it's not that you want to not actually, here you go. I actually posted about this most recently about how my new book, Mastery Unleashed, came out. I co-authored it. I wrote one chapter of the book, and it was so fun to do. And I had shared a story about how I was told that, don't make being an author your goal, because that's akin to being a rock star, like as if it'll happen type of idea. And so I kind of started stepping into this, well, I'm going to do the things you tell me I can't do type of mindset, which is actually quite controlling in another way. And, when I realized that, as I matured, I started resonating really deeply with a speech that Taylor Swift gave, actually, in the last few years, where she said, she stopped trying to do the things that they said she couldn't do and started doing whatever the hell she wanted.
Yeah.
And that is kind of where I feel we are coming from when it comes to marketing. We're not like, it's not about throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping it sticks. It's about understanding marketing as a whole, coming to terms with different strategies that exist and have worked, and creating your own form of whatever that is. And that feels like, and that's kind of where you merge that whole strategic marketing, where they put you into a box, with what I like to call intuitive marketing, which is just creating for the sake of creating. We merge those two and find a way to really connect deeply with the people we are meant to engage with. And that doesn't mean that you need to niche down and say it is this person. It just means that because of your approach, a specific type of person will be drawn to what you're doing.
This is something you spoke about in your last podcast with Rachel, about letting your free flag fly and like making sure you're attracting the right people. And she's talking about her Pokemon, and you were talking about your love of Harry Potter, and it's like you get the right people. You get who you're meant to get. Yeah.
That's great. And what's interesting about, and this is where I often tell people, when we're having these conversations, they can go one way or the other. We can go really serious, or we can go really light. We can take it everywhere. And you mentioned before about that copy paste thing. And whenever you copy and paste, it doesn't seem to work the way you thought it was going to work. And it doesn't seem to feel like you've achieved the success that you thought you would feel. And you reminded me, I've got a book behind me here that I haven't read yet, so don't ask me about it. But I'm assuming it's going to be good, because the foreword is written by a performer who I absolutely love, Jason Mraz. And he's even signed it. This was a birthday or a Christmas gift from my husband, who very much thought deeply about what would make me happy, and that F the shoulds, do the wants. I just love that. That's so wonderful. Actually, let me give credit. The actual author is Trisha Huffman. I'll tell you what I think about it when I actually read it. I just haven't yet. But my point being, Jason Mraz writes a song, Be Where Your Feet Are. And in that song, he talks about how whenever he tries to do the things that other people tell him to do, it never turns out quite right. The only time that it turns out the way he really wants it to, even if it's not the path that he thought he was going to take, but it turns out the way he wanted it to, is when he does the thing that's good for him, that feels in alignment with him and who he is. And I think that that's a really powerful notion that should be, and I know I just said F the shoulds, but I feel very drawn to the idea that that's the way we were meant to function, and that's how we will thrive.
Absolutely. That's how we get our connection to what is best. Like, this is why, I mean, I say we put so much emotional and spiritual work into our creations, because it is spiritual and it's personally spiritual. And how do you know, how are we even getting the creative inspiration to perform or create or manifest what's next if we're not tuned into what's sort of etherically coming down the pipeline for us, what's meant for us, like that has our name on it out there in
Absolutely.
the ethers.
And this is funny because we spoke about in the past now, and I've mentioned this, I've been in a few situations where I've been able to see Ashlee speak. And I can't stress this enough. If you haven't seen her speak, or if you're looking for speakers, that's the person you want to reach out to. There's my shameless plug, because I want to have more conversations. I want to have more conversations because there are a few things like talking about masculinity and femininity within ourselves, and what those things represent, and how we can transmute things through ourselves philosophically, as well as, of course, mentally and emotionally, psychologically, all those things, and how we then use that to show up in the world and to make decisions in the world, which I believe is a part of at least little m marketing, right? Because I don't think we're ever not marketing. So that said, I wanted to make sure I put into perspective where we could go in this conversation, but we've only got a certain amount of time. So we're going to have to continue this conversation and expand it to involve some of these more deeper thinking approaches to marketing and living, because life and business are intricately intertwined. And I have always believed that since my wee ones were running around and I was changing diapers while hopping on coffee chats. I've always believed that it was intricately intertwined. So assuming we're going to have another conversation here on Marketing Rebels, is there something that you feel the audience needs to hear from this conversation in particular that we haven't touched on yet? And I'll let you think about that just for a moment, and then I'm going to bring you forth and have you share that, because all of you need to know that these conversations happen every single week, and they are full of gold, the kind of gold that you can't pick up at a jeweler's. Okay, I encourage you, I implore you to hit the bell. Right? Subscribe so you can hear, when is the next conversation happening? When can I dive deeper? When is the part 2 of Ashlee and Shauna conversation going to happen? You want to be around for that. So do that. And for now, Ashlee, I'm going to let you take the stage and share with the people what they need to hear.
Well, I guess the last thing I want to talk about is this entrepreneurial journey really hones you, and it really strips you and refines you and has you integrate a lot of aspects of yourself, I think, to be able to stand up there and be yourself and offer what you're offering and bring that forward. As you said, it's the gold, right? And so this entrepreneurial journey really implores you to refine in this alchemical way, in this alchemy. So some of what I offer is like an everyday alchemy, a personal alchemy. So taking everything that you're learning and taking everything that you're wanting to do and bringing it into yourself and expanding based on that. So really that integrative process, so we're creating gold from all of what we've been churning inside ourselves. So I have a Patreon page, which I have Everyday Alchemy as the focus, and I put in little drops of wisdom, audio notes, journal prompts, things like that. I talk about everyday alchemy in my podcast, For the Love of Humanity, which was my own personal journey to at my best and highest, and also at my most accepting and of everything, regardless of where I'm at. So thank you very much. I appreciate you having me on today. I love these conversations. You're such a fantastic person. You're a fantastic host. You ask the best questions. Thank you so much.
Well, you know what? I can't stress enough for all of you to visit that page, explore what Ashlee has to offer, because just listening to the podcast will give you a sense of the types of journey you've probably already experienced from another point of view that can help shed some light on what it is you're here for. Because sometimes that's the hardest question to answer. And with that said, I just realized as you were speaking, Ashlee, that about that gold, I forgot about your weaving gold bit. That, man, see, Thank you, brain, for reminding me about that. That was perfect. And sometimes things just turn out the way they're meant to turn out. And more likely than not, it'll happen when you're being your most authentic self. So with that, I encourage all of you to not only subscribe, but to join the conversation, to reach out and say hi, because we're not going to bite. We have all manner of insights to share and a lot of love to share too. I'm all about connection. So is Ashlee. And we're looking forward to hearing from you. So with that, I hope you have a fabulous rest of your day and follow along for part 2. We'll chat soon.